Sometimes comparison feels like relief, not the loud kind, not the obvious kind where we envy someone else's life, but the quieter kind, the kind that says, I may not be perfect, but at least I am not like that. At least I do not make those choices. At least my life is not that messy. At least I take faith more seriously. For a moment, comparison can make us feel steady. It gives us a measuring stick. It gives us a place to stand. But there is a cost we do not always notice. Because if my peace depends on someone else being worse than me, then I need them to stay beneath me. And that is where comparison begins to harden into contempt. In Luke 18, Jesus tells a parable to people carrying that kind of confidence. Luke says, he told it to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. That matters. Jesus is not speaking first to people who know they are far away. He is speaking to people who believe they are already standing where they should be. People who are sure they are doing well. People who have learned to measure their spiritual lives by looking sideways. So Jesus tells a story about two men who go up to the temple to pray. One is a Pharisee, the other is a tax collector. And it is important that we do not flatten either one. The Pharisee would not have sounded like a villain to Jesus' first listeners. He would have sounded serious, devoted, disciplined, a person associated with prayer, scripture, fasting, and giving. The things he mentions are not bad things. Prayer is not the problem. Fasting is not the problem. Giving is not the problem. The problem is what he uses them for. And the tax collector would not have sounded automatically admirable. Tax collectors were often seen as compromised, connected to an exploitative system, capable of real harm. So the tension of the parable is not that Jesus compares a fake sinner with a secretly good man. It is stronger than that. The Pharisee may really have admirable practices. The tax collector may really have guilt. And still, Jesus says something that overturns the room. The Pharisee stands and prays. Some translations say he stood by himself. Others capture the phrase as praying about himself. Either way, his prayer keeps circling back to the same subject, himself. He begins with God. I thank you. But very quickly, the prayer becomes a spiritual resume. I am not like other people. I am not like robbers. I am not like evildoers. I am not like adulterers. I am not even like this tax collector. I fast. I give. He mentions God, but his prayer keeps circling back to himself. And maybe that is the quiet warning. A prayer can use religious language and still become a mirror. It can sound thankful and still be built on comparison. It can name God while using another person's failure as evidence for our own righteousness. The Pharisee can see everyone else's failure. The tax collector can only see his own need for mercy. Jesus says the tax collector stands at a distance. He does not even lift his eyes to heaven. He beats his breast and says, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. It is a short prayer. No list, no explanation, no comparison. He does not say, at least I am not like someone else. He does not look for a person lower than himself on the measuring stick. He brings no resume. He offers no defense. His prayer is more than asking God to feel sorry for him. He places himself completely at God's mercy. And that is where the parable turns. Because Luke begins by telling us about people who consider themselves righteous. And Jesus ends by saying that this man, the tax collector, went home justified. The people at the beginning trust in their own righteousness. But at the end, God is the one who declares who is right with him. That is the great discovery in the parable. Righteousness is not something we establish by comparison. The Pharisee comes to God with evidence. The tax collector comes to God with need. The Pharisee presents a case for himself. The tax collector asks for mercy. And Jesus says the second man goes home justified. Not because sin does not matter. Not because the tax collector's life was secretly innocent. Not because spiritual disciplines are worthless. But because mercy is received, not proven. And that can be hard for us to accept. Because comparison gives us something to hold. It lets us say, I may not be where I should be, but I am doing better than them. I may still struggle, but at least I am not that kind of person. I may have questions, but at least my faith looks stronger than theirs. It feels safer to stand before God with evidence. Evidence that we tried, evidence that we served, evidence that we were more disciplined, evidence that someone else failed more, obviously. But Jesus gently takes the measuring stick out of our hands, not to shame us, to free us, because you do not have to make someone else smaller to stand honestly before God. You do not have to win a moral comparison. You do not have to prove that your life is less messy than someone else's. You do not have to build your peace on contempt. You can come with need. You can come with honesty. You can come without pretending. The tax collector's prayer is not impressive. It is not polished. It is not long, but it is true. And maybe that is the invitation for us. To stop trying to make prayer into a performance. To stop using other people's weakness to avoid naming our own. To stop keeping score. A simple prayer for this week might be, God, help me come to you honestly, without comparing myself to anyone else. That is enough. Not because honesty earns mercy, but because honesty opens the hands that receive it. When you find yourself saying, at least I am not like them, pause, not with shame, just with awareness, and ask, what am I afraid to bring honestly before God? What need am I trying to cover with comparison? What would it mean to come without a resume? The good news of this parable is not that you need to become impressive. It is that mercy is available when we stop trying to establish ourselves by comparison. The Pharisee comes with evidence. The tax collector comes with need. And the one who comes honestly with need goes home justified. So you can stop keeping score. You do not have to prove. You do not have to win. You do not have to make someone else smaller. You can come honestly. You can come with need, and God's mercy is enough.